Hi, Coach Lora Erickson with blonderunner.com. We'll wait. Hi, thanks for joining. We'll wait a few minutes to have everybody join. I haven't posted a little bit in a little while because I've been gone for a few days. I went and attended this event that I want to talk a little about and maybe share some things about how I trained for this particular event. Hi Alex, thanks for joining. Please invite your friends to join. I'd love to share my experiences, and if you're thinking about doing a half Ironman, I'd love to give you some pointers on training for that and kind of share my experience that I had in this last event. So feel free to chat and make comments and put hearts so I know you like what I'm talking about. So this last weekend I participated in a half Iron event. Thanks for the hearts. Thank you so much. Don't be afraid to ask questions too. Now that I got the chat working, I'm super excited to answer questions. Gosh, the shirt's still big. It's an extra small. So, but I did participate in the Vikingman triathlon this weekend. This has actually been on my bucket list for a little while. It's a race that happens in Idaho. So I'm from Utah. I traveled up with my family and we camped there for the event. For those of you that are new to triathlon, a half Iron distance is 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, and then you follow up with a half marathon run. So one right after the other. It's a fun event. I think it's really challenging. This particular course was fairly flat, the challenge was to keep your legs going and you didn't get any breaks. So sometimes with up and downhill you get a little more of a break, not particularly with this one. So the swim is actually downriver, so if you're, if swimming is all trepidatious for you, then this is a great event to do because it is down the river. So, which your swim time is a little bit faster. And actually, this is the first time I've participated in one that's in a river like this, and actually it wasn't nearly it didn't push me as much as I was hoping, but it did, I had a decent swim time. Preparing for these kind of events, I definitely think the volume is what's going to carry you through. If you don't have those long workouts, then you're not going to be able to perform as well as you'd like. But with any triathlon, I think it matters how you have to really kind of be decent at all the sports. I am a runner. I come from a running background, but I think it's valuable to be fairly good at all the disciplines to do well at the sport. So we actually ended up starting a little bit late. Matter of fact, we went up the night before. Actually, this is a well-organized event. I think the gal that does it is an Ironman, so that always helps it. I love it when race directors have been participants before. Some people will put on races that haven't done a lot of races, and you can tell. This particular race, this person has done a lot of races, and I've heard about it before and it's been advertised well, and that's a good sign that it's probably a well-organized event. So we went up the day before and did our check-in, we got our packet, and then I always like to do course review. And I suggest that for anyone that's doing a race is to check out the course beforehand. It really helps. I found that driving the course, I knew it was a flat course. You can tell that by what it says on the website, but it was really bumpy, and I didn't realize it was going to be that bumpy until we drove it. But it was even more bumpy when I got on my bike. So thanks for joining. We had a few more people join, so that's great. So it was a little bit on the bumpy route. I did have a little bit of problem with my, the swim was great. We got out, they actually had strippers, so they took off your wetsuit for you, which was always great. It's nice to know all those little details. It's good to study that website and know what you're going into when you do the race. So they did have wetsuit strippers, went into quick transition onto my bike, onto the bumpy road, and then it was actually a 4-lap loop route, so a little on the boring side, but it's nice because you're not getting lost. And they actually have different length events there too, so sprint, Olympic, different ones. And so it was a little hard to know who was in what race. You can only tell kind of by their speed. So thank you for joining. Just kind of going through what I went through on the bike. So again, it was a bumpy route, and then one thing I always check my bike. I clean it. Thank you for the hearts. I clean it really well before events usually, and lube the chain and make sure everything's functioning well. I actually tightened up. I had one of my friends just go to nationals, and he actually had a seat post drop while he was riding. So I checked my seat post. I made sure I screwed everything on really tight. The one thing I didn't check, which I ended up having a problem with, was actually my aero bar bottle cage on the front of my bike. And the last time I had put it on, I put it on really tight. So I thought, oh, I'll be fine. That doesn't need to be checked. But yeah, it needed to be checked. At about mile 40, about 20 or 2 hours into the ride, it just started shifting back and forth. Thank you so much for the congratulations. Yeah, it was great. It was actually a fun event. So, but my bottle kept whipping back and forth. I was like, oh no. What I was really worried about is that my aero cage was, it was screwed into my stem. And so for the bike, the stem is pretty important. You don't want that coming loose. Your handlebars will start moving. You won't have control of your bike. So I was really nervous. But once I pulled the bottle out, I was trying to decide what to do. This was a sanctioned race. So sanctioned races, USA Triathlon organization, you know, some races are sanctioned, and so you have to follow certain rules. And they actually had many officials out on course on motorcycles. So one of the rules is you can't abandon your equipment. So I couldn't just throw my bottle without the chances that I could be either disqualified or have a major time penalty. So I didn't want to have that happen. So the choice was to hold my bottle, which, you know, my other bottle on my bike was occupied, so I didn't have any other choice but to carry it. And then, you know, I was concerned that stem would come loose, but I moved it aside and kind of checked it, and it wasn't that screw that had come loose. It was a different one. So I ended up putting the bottle back in and kind of looping my thumb in that. Make sure you always have a bottle that has a little loop on the end on the front. Ended up, you know, having it on my aero bars and holding it. But, you know, I think with racing, no matter what, you're probably going to run into a problem you didn't expect. It could have been a flat tire, but it wasn't. So I was happy for that. Thanks for joining. Just sharing my experience on the bike and how my water bottle kind of came loose. So it was kind of scary. But I was able to hold that on. And like I said before, there's a 4-lap route. So a little boring, but at least I knew. I had goals. I went into the race having a time goal for each lap. And so I knew what I wanted to do. So that 3rd lap was the one I really wanted to push, and that's the lap that my bottle came loose. So it wasn't quite as quick as I wanted, and because I didn't want that bottle to fly out when I was turning, it did slow me down on all the turns. So it did probably cost me 8 or 10 minutes, unfortunately, on that bike. But I got through safe, and I didn't take a turf, or, you know, it didn't pop out. I didn't, you know, wreck. I mean, I'm so grateful when I get off the bike and everything is intact and I didn't have a problem. And I loved running into transition. I was hoping I'd see my cute family cheering, and sure enough, they were there cheering. And my daughter yells, "I did my own hair!" And we've been working on her doing her own hair, so I was able to give her a thumbs up and say hi to him. And my husband let me know there was a woman in front of me, and so I had a ways to catch her. But I took off on the run, and, you know, the way I look at racing is it's great if you can, you know, try to do your best at that race, but I always try to do my own race. I had goals in mind of what pacing I wanted to do. I hit the first mile at 7:45, which is about what I wanted to, which is pretty usual. I run fairly well off the bike, and so my goal was to just kind of hang on to an 8-minute mile as long as I could, see what my legs would do, and just stick to my nutrition plan. And so that's pretty much what I did. It did slow a little over time, but for the most part, it was fairly flat course, and it was like when we started. And I think I told you we stayed the night before. It was getting really windy. It was quite windy on the bike, actually. So that added to kind of the anxiety with the bottle. But I've been in worse, so I was able to handle it. But it had died down by the time we were on the run, which was super nice. Thanks for joining. And it was about 70 degrees or something when we finished. It was just fantastic. I mean, I was glad that like I said, the wind died down. But, you know, the way I look at it, any time you're dealing with any weather conditions, everyone else is dealing with it too. When you're dealing with hills or a bumpy road or things like that, pretty much everyone's dealing with it too. So you just have to push yourself through. I think the key in long course racing, thanks for joining. We had some more people join. Thank you for listening in. I think the key to long course racing is one, training. You have to have the volume behind you or you're just going to peter out on the run. Another thing is you've got to kind of keep it together up here. I think every race, and especially long stuff, it's easy to kind of wander. Thanks for joining. We're having quite a few people join. That's great. But thanks for the hearts. Thank you. But I think you've got to go into the race with a mindset you're going to do your best, and you're not going to let anything deter you from your own, what your goals are for you. No matter what happens around you, you kind of have to have your thing. I found in this race, it wasn't a huge race, but we had an out and back route, so we pretty much went 3.3 miles and then back and then out and then back again. It was super friendly. People were like waving and saying hi, and you had people to kind of work on. That's what I try to do on the run, is just find the next person and try to catch them. That's super helpful. And I think, you know, you've got to kind of keep your mind in it in terms of, you know, whether it's playing games with yourself to say, okay, my pace I think is this much. I have a GPS watch, which I think is super helpful. I have the 920 XT with heart rate. If you're really getting into this, that's probably the best watch you can get. I think the GPS really helps because it gives you feedback as you're going. There's no guessing. Thanks for joining. We're having more people join. That's fantastic. So on the run for me, you know, I do a lot of numbers in my head too when I'm running. That gives me an idea of, well, if I maintain this pacing, I'll end up with this overall time, or this is what time I'll get on the half marathon of this event. So I kind of do those numbers in my head, and then I adapt my goals as I'm going. But that really helps me kind of keep my mind going. Other things that I think of when I'm running are, of course, what I'm going to do at every stop. I actually walk through some of the stops to get my hydration. I think that's a real mistake a lot of beginners make, is they wait till they're thirsty. That's just not going to work, honestly. For some people, exercise can be either an appetite stimulant or appetite suppressant, and for most, if you're pushing hard, it's a suppressant. So you want to make sure you have a nutrition strategy. Just stick to what you've done in training, and then it works. So I actually did walk through most of the aid stations, and I usually don't take as much solid on the run. I do more of a liquid. So they actually had heat and water. So I walked through. My rule of thumb is usually depends on how hot it was. And thank you very much. So good. I'm glad you're doing that. The hydration is key. But walking through the station, don't be afraid to. I mean, I did well in this race, and I do fairly well in racing, and I'm not afraid to walk a little bit, especially with long course. Matter of fact, I did a half marathon only. It wasn't in Ironman event or half iron. And I walked through the aid stations right from the beginning. I'm glad you do, because sometimes when you're running, you don't get enough. So yeah, you can have faster times walking through, but you got to be careful not to walk too long, because if you walk too long, it's really hard to get started. Have you noticed that before? So you don't want to walk for too long and then you have to get back into that rhythm. But walk long enough to get the hydration you need. Like when I did the half, like I said, just a half marathon in April, I ran a 1:36. It was 12 weeks after I had knee surgery, so it wasn't a super duper fast race, but it was decent. And what I did is I just walked through the aid stations and got my water and whatever I had planned for myself. And I found that a lot of people that I ended up beating by far at the beginning, they weren't doing that. They just skipped the station. You know, we were kind of running in a group together, and so, you know, and I'd walk and they'd get a little ahead and I'd catch back up, and then we were kind of doing that a little bit. But then, you know, towards mile 6 and 7 and 8, when they hadn't taken anything, I was able to just crank it out. I kept my pacing. I had my plan. So that would be a piece of advice I'd give you in racing, is don't let other people distract you from what your goal is, or what you know works for you. Don't let other, you know, oh, I see a lot of people do that in racing. Thank you for joining. But a lot of people will just, oh, they see somebody else take this or a gel. Oh, I'll do that too. You really need to practice it in your training. So Yeah, it is your own personal journey. That's absolutely it. You know, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, do you go into a race and you want to win? And of course, everybody wants to do their best. Of course, who wouldn't want to win? But I don't go into a race going, I'm planning on winning this. Ever really, because it's not always dependent on that. The only thing I can do is control myself and my actions. So I really like to focus on the moment of the race, and I find I enjoy it much more if I'm in the moment. Like swimming, I'm thinking about my form and I'm just enjoying myself on the ride. I'm getting in my groove. How's my pedal stroke? I'm in aero. What I'm doing with nutrition. If I just get in my groove and do my thing, then I do better. So thank you for all the people joining. I appreciate you listening to my little journey here. But and just little tidbits of advice. So I do invite you to re-watch some of this, and hopefully it'll help you. But other things I wanted to share about racing that really helped me in this particular race is a few of the mantras that I had in this particular race is I was hit by a truck about a year ago on my bicycle, and so I'm still recovering from that, and so my knee is kind of giving me some trouble. So yeah, you have to do what's personally best for you, absolutely. But I knew that I just had to kind of tone it down so my knee wouldn't give me problems, and I just had to work within my limits of my own body. And so what I've been focusing on in my mind is, yeah, my knee isn't doing as well as I'd like, or my hip, but my other knee is great, and my shoulders are strong, and you know, my abs are strong. And I had to think about, yeah, it was a hard accident. I'll definitely talk about that more, but it kind of makes you stronger though. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think I'm alive for some reason, and I'm gonna keep doing my goals. You know, I've got a big announcement I'm gonna make tomorrow. I hope you could join back. But so I had to just kind of think about what is strong. When my knee started hurting a little bit at mile 11. So I just had to think, everything else is strong though. You know, what is strong on me? And that was my mantra, is I'm strong, I'm confident, and you know, I know I can do this. And that's kind of what pushes me through the end. And also the cheers. I mean, if you ever can be at a race, you cheer for people. Yes, a lot of people are born with bad knees, or maybe they inherently have problems with their knees, and so the thing I would suggest with that is make sure you're doing these strengthening exercises. I think there's a real misconception that running's bad for the knees, and I think if you're prone to having bad knees, the thing you've really got to work on is the strength around the knee, and that, you know, running can be done healthfully if you do it right. A lot of people that get hurt, they just do too much too soon. I've seen people jump into these long events and they're not trained properly. That is not my style at all. Matter of fact, I'm probably an over-preparer. I just think that's the way to do it. You know, if you're going to do it right. And that means train properly. I have jumped into a few races that I don't know if I would say I was ill-prepared, but I would say I wasn't as prepared as I'd like to, but I took it on as an adventure. So I'll probably talk about that a little bit. So, question here, that's me. I took a year to train for my first half marathon. Absolutely, take the time that you need. I've often had people approach me and say, I'm gonna do a marathon in 2 months, and this is where I'm at, and they haven't even done like 8 miles run, and I'm like, you're better off either figuring a walk run strategy or just go for the half. You know, we're not trying to win an Olympic medal here, people, and I think people don't realize, if you push too hard, you know, this wasn't a super hard push race for me. This was a training race. And so it's not smart to push so hard that you're hurt for months and months. You know, maybe if you know, depends on your goal for that race. But this was a training race for me. And I think you have to have like A races, B races, C races. And it's not smart to push yourself to the point where you're injured for a long time, and I've seen a lot of beginners do that. So just be careful and take the time that you need to train for this. I've actually done 2. This is my second half Ironman this year, and so, you know, I've built up over time. I've put the volume in that I need to perform well. I'm not very sore at all. That's a good sign. That could be a sign that you didn't push as hard as you could, and I could have pushed harder, but I didn't really need to. This was a training race. I need to recover quickly from it and do some other long workouts this week. So, but it's definitely valuable to have the right kind of training, and then have a good mindset. figure out a plan, have a mantra, have things that will keep you focused during your race, and then you'll be successful. However success is defined for you, that you'll be successful. And success doesn't always mean winning a race. It doesn't mean, I mean, there were people there that finished. That is the success, is starting something and finishing happily, you know, enjoying it. There were so many that was their first, you know, before the swim start. What I love about these events is the socialization and talking to people. There were some at that event, this was their first triathlon, and they were doing a half. I thought, that is brave, but they had been, you know, we talk about training a little bit and how they've been doing. This is all at the swim start. It's fantastic to talk to people. It was 52 degrees, matter of fact, when we started, and the ambient temperature was, which in the water was warmer, so it was warmer to get in the water, but it's definitely valuable to train properly for races. And you know, don't be afraid to go for something hard like this. If you train properly, you're going to be able to finish. You will. Matter of fact, I can say I've always been kind of a short course girl. I'm a sprint Olympic distance kind of gal, and I've been doing the longer stuff this year. I would say that a half iron is easier than an Olympic. I really think at this point, Olympic is a much harder event because you're pushing yourself a lot harder. This kind of event, you just have to be out there for longer, but you're staying a lot more aerobic. You kind of have to be able to get through the whole thing. So it was a great experience. I would highly recommend this race. It is a little on the monotonous side just because you have 4 loops, but there's no, you know, you're not stressed about getting lost either. It's still a very well organized event for the first race, so definitely would be something that you could consider if you live in the Idaho area or northern Utah. It's very easy to travel to this event, and it's not overly large. Sometimes those big races can be intimidating and they're expensive, so this is a good way to kind of have, I like the hometown feel, honestly, and I love it when my family can be involved and we can camp together. And I mean, transition was like a walk across the street to get to the, you know, it was, or across the RV park to get in to put my bike in transition. And hey, I was lucky number 7, just saying, still got my number on. So the number was, that's what did it, right? That got me the luckiness there. But it was fun to have that kind of event. So definitely, you know, search out. There's so many great websites to check out. TriFind is a great one if you're looking for a triathlon event in your area, and just have fun and go for it. So thanks for letting me share, and I think I showed you my medal, and it's always fun when they have finisher medals, and they do have one at this race, and I know a lot of people like that, so I wanted to share that. But hope you guys have a great night, and thank you so much for joining in. And if you missed part of it, please watch the rebroadcast, and I'll be making some really exciting announcement tomorrow, so I'll be back, and I hope you watch me on Periscope tomorrow. So have a great night.